Ladies and gents, boys and girls, hello and a very warm welcome. Welcome back to the Aram training channel. This is about competitive rowing. Today's video topic: how tall should you be, or do you have to be, in order to be a good rower? Let me get the facts straight from the start. Usually, the people who tell you you're too small are the same people who never question any training methods, any training plans, anything they did, and just pass on the half knowledge or quarter knowledge or maybe knowledge they got. And I'm being super frank and straight with that. See, when I started to row, I had different people surrounding me. I had beneficial people and I had talkers. And it was mostly, or actually almost exclusively, the talkers who told me I was too little. Look, I'm 5'9", I did the math, I'm 176 centimeters. We go by centimeters in Europe. And that is not tall. So they told me to become a lightweight rower, the worst decision ever I could have made. The thing is, what I did not know back then was that a lightweight rower, if he really wants to be fast, doesn't have to be or cannot be much slower than a heavyweight rower, because the world best times aren't that much different. Actually, if lightweight rowers who achieved the world best times could have had just 2-3 kilos more of muscle mass, at least on the men's side. On the women's side, it's a bit different, but on the men's side, if the lightweight men could have had a couple of kilos more muscle mass, instead of 70 kilos average, they could have had 75 kilos, 78 kilos. They would have beaten the living hell out of the heavyweights, and I'm 100% sure about that. Now, the point is that height seems to be a big topic. When you're too small, you've got an issue. What is too small? How do you define that? Well, the definition is you need good levers. Oh, really? What kind of good levers do you need? Well, if you're tall, you have long levers because you have long arms. Oh, excellent. What is actually important? Do we have a long arm pull? Oh, you need a lot of reach into the catch. What is a long reach? Give me numbers. Oh, I can't tell you, but it's got to be a lot. If you can't even give me numbers, how do you even dare to give me advice on being tall or too small? See? Well, rowers always were tall. Is that your best argument? Now, I'm not saying that there is a minimum height that makes sense to be a good rower. Well, it's certainly the case. But if you are not extremely small by any standards, you can become a good rower. The point is that you just have to find your own rowing style. And the same is true if you're too tall to be a good rower. I cannot show you the footage. World Rowing is very, very picky about that nobody shares their footage. I think they want to keep rowing a bit of a secret, if I'm honest. Yeah, that's my opinion. So there was a race at the 2017 World Championships. It was the women's single, the A final. And there were 3 candidates for the medals. There was the British rower, Victoria Thornley. And if I'm not mistaken, she came from track and field before. Then Vicky Thornley is about 190, 191 in centimeters. You have to do the math of what this is in feet, but it's tall. Victoria Thornley is a very tall woman. So Thornley went for silver. Bronze went to the Austrian, Magdalena Lobnik. She's 180 something, 181 centimeters, I think, which is also fairly tall for a woman. Do you know who got gold? The Swiss, Janine Gmelin. And Janine Gmelin, in my humble opinion, one of the best female rowers I've ever seen. She's 170 or 171, if I'm not mistaken, 171 centimeters. And there's a very interesting camera angle leading up to the finish line where Victoria Thornley, a tremendous rower, she's not a nobody, she's a great rower, tries to catch Janine Gmelin. And they're going about the same stroke rate, Now Thornley is about 20 some centimeters taller. That's a lot by any standard. And she just cannot catch up. Why? Because every time Millen takes a stroke and uses the upper body swing, her short levers, she uses body weight. And if Thornley did the same, her stroke would be too long. So she cannot take advantage of her body levers the same way. Let me show you what I mean. There are certain stroke lengths that make sense, and that is about 80 degrees at the catch. You have to think about what 80 degrees actually mean. You don't see this on an erg, but on the barrower I can show you. I'm at roughly 80 degrees now. You can see the red line, the angle curve being all the way down. Where would the blade be? This is a Barrow Pro. I didn't use the full oars, but you can have full oars with blades if you want. Now the blade would be somewhere here pointing out. In which direction do we want to propel the boat? In that direction, going this way. So the function is that we lock the blade into the water, we lock it in, and then we push the boat past the fixed blade. Now, if we go all the way into the catch, in which direction does the blade point? Now, if we go all the way into the catch, in which direction does the blade point? It points out. That's not a very helpful position. Okay. Would it make more sense to catch about here? Possibly, if you have a clean catch. See, the more slip on the blade you have, that means the longer it takes you to calm down your hand vertically, the more reach you need. How much finish angle do we need? Well, about 40 degrees. This is when it starts to become highly, highly ineffective. 40 degrees doesn't seem as much as 80, but you have to take into consideration that we've already started to propel the boat tremendously. And now that we get the blades out, this is the phase where the boat is about the fastest during the hands away. So the boat has sped up so much that the closer the blade goes towards the boat, the more we actually slow the boat down. So there's not much angle that makes sense at the finish. So 80 degrees catch angle is the max that makes sense. As a coach, I prefer a little less, but a better body position. I'll show you in a moment what I mean. And 40 degree finish angle is the max that makes sense. Then it starts to become ineffective. So 120 degrees stroke length is already too much. We can establish that about 110 to 115, maybe 118 degrees stroke length, effective stroke length, makes sense. What do I mean by that? We have to distinguish between stroke length and effective stroke length. If you look at the bottom curves, these are force curves over a timeline. So I'm rowing feet out, so that already reduces my length. Every time I'm applying force, a strain gauge picks up the bend of a 30 millimeter thick axle and transmits the data in real time to the tablet. There is no algorithm, there is no guessing. This is direct, raw data. And when I start to drive, I can immediately see the effect I have on the oars. Now let me show you something. When you start to drive and your hands go up and down, do you see the force curves wiggling up and down? Why? I'm only having resistance this way, not up and down. Why is it picking that up? I tell you why. Every time your hands go up, you lose horizontal connection. And that's exactly the same that's going on in the water with your blade. The barber is designed to make you feel that, because if you do this, you feel a lack of resistance because your hands go up, because there is no resistance upwards. And the barrow is designed to make you see that with the force curves. So what I'm looking for is a long effective stroke length. And in my experience, it's sometimes better to tell people don't row as long. One of the clues of this video, and one of the main messages I want to convey, is Don't strive for utopia stroke length because somebody told you you were too small. That's the greatest mistake you can make. I made this mistake for a long time until I had the bi-rower prototype when I was still in the under-23 national team in Austria. And for the first time, I had raw data seeing that my stroke length, being 176 centimeters tall, was exactly as long or longer than the stroke length of my rowing mate, who was 193. Can you believe that? With the same setup, a 160 centimeters spread, same inboard length, I was longer. I had a longer effective stroke. And I was also faster, although I was a lightweight. And then I showed this to one of the coaches in the club, and they said, yeah, you're still too small. Okay, give me an argument. Give me a point. No, I can't give you a point. And that's when I realized how much useless talk was going on. And I'm making this video to show you, you need data. You don't need hearsay or talk. You need data. And if the data tells you, let's go to rower's mode here. So see the orange, ANGL, ANGR, angle left, angle right. So give me a couple strokes. I'm rowing feet out. That shortens my drive. So I'm going easy, and I'm 110 degrees, 130 feet out. Let's row feet in. Okay, let's go for the full thing. I'm in my best workout clothes. I'm about at the limit that makes sense. Let's look at the force curves. Can I have an immediate force pickup? Or does that stroke length mean I'm doing too much and I'm wiggling into a plateau? That's a wiggle into a plateau. What we want is that, an immediate pickup. And can I hold a plateau? Let's look at it. That's pretty direct. It's not perfect, but it's pretty direct. What can we conclude? For sure, with 5'9", you're not too small. And 176 centimeters is 6 centimeters more than Janine Mellin, I think. Janine, sorry if I make you smaller than you are. The point is that you have to ditch all that stupid hearsay about, hey, you're too small, you can't be a good rower. Because it usually comes from people who don't have data. I've seen an Italian pair, an Italian junior pair in Belgium, and I think it was 2008 in Hazewinkel, if I'm not mistaken. And they won by a mile, the junior pair. And when they got out on the winning platoon, they were about a foot apart in terms of body height. Their body height was so different from each other. One was so much smaller, he was smaller than I was, and the other was so much taller than I was, and they were still beating everybody. The point is you have to know how to use your body. How do you get the desired stroke length of 110 degrees? Maybe it's just 100 degrees. I'd rather have 100 degree stroke length with a clean curve than an endless reach and having a curve like that. No, it's not the same quality of speed. With a curve like this, I'm playing because I can almost not fake it anymore. That wiggle will make you slower because it's an endless connection, reconnection. You can only connect if your hands are vertically stable. You cannot connect when your hands go up and down. And a lot of people cannot control their hand levels. A problem is that if you're used to a linear pole from all winter, your shoulders become immobile. They cannot go in. They cannot go inwards because it's quite a bit of pec work here. I use the pecs to go in and out. You have to be able to use your body the way it is. When I was a junior and I if I could go back and tell my young self that. I have a channel. It's called To My Young Self. It's tiny. I've just started it. And in that channel, when I'm driving, I really just record videos to my younger self. What are the things I should have known earlier? What if I could have been there, or, pat my younger self on the shoulder and say, hey buddy, don't be desperate. It's okay. You're not too small. You listen too much. That is your problem. To hell with all these idiots. A couple years later, they will be called haters. They will be called fearful haters who have never really achieved anything seriously. And if they have so, they've completely lost their human side. Don't listen. You have to be fast anyway. No matter how tall you are, no matter how small you are, no matter if people tell you you're too tall, you're too small, you've got short legs, long legs, you've got long arms, short arms, your wingspan is excellent, it's not excellent. Hey, you're so tall, you should be a good rower. Why are you not fast? To hell with you. My recommendation, I think if you can achieve about 100-degree stroke length, effectively, you are tall enough. That's my opinion. And if it's 98 and you beat the hell out of everybody, screw you and be fast and enjoy it. But don't listen to these naysayers. You know why length has become so important and weight? Because a lot of selection is being done on static linear ergs or dynamic linear ergs, but it's still a linear erg, and they always favor stroke length. There's a scientific study done between the bi-rower and the Concept 2. That study is on birower.com. I put it all the way in the bottom. We didn't pay for that study at all. It was an independent study. And one of the conclusions, if you read that through, was a part of the discussion in that study, that the linear drive erg allows you much more length, and it favors length. There was a British rower recently on Instagram who apologized for the bad technique, but it was the fastest 5K he's ever done. Yes, his technique was good for the erg, but in a true rowing environment, that's different. You need to be able to carry your own body weight. I think many heavyweights are too heavy. It is important that you enjoy the sport of rowing. And if you want to be competitive, my honest recommendation, anybody who tells you you're too small, cross them out. Remove them from your circle of trust. You know what I mean? Don't hate them, just remove them from your circle of influence. Everybody has an inner and an outer circle. And your inner circle should be of people who give you honest and frank but helpful criticism. And the outer circle is everybody else. I recently had, and with this I want to close that video, I recently had a comment from, well, I'm not going to mention the name, asking about women's lightweight rowing. And then that person stated, well, apparently you have no experience with lightweight rowing. I thought, how stupid. I was a lightweight myself. I competed at the Worlds as a lightweight. I coached lightweights up to absolute elite level. I probably have more experience with lightweight than that person who wrote that. So I said, okay, I'm open for criticism. Tell me. I'm up for the discussion. But until then, I treat your comment exactly as it is. I didn't say what it was, but it was a useless, verdictuous comment that was not helpful in any way. And then she said, well, I should encourage lightweights to be, because there are natural lightweights and some are not natural lightweights. And I said, it's not about being natural lightweight or not, it's about being fast. And please look at the world best times. My entire point was the gap between women lightweight and women open weight is just greater when you look at the world best times than the gap between male lightweight and male open weight. The gap is so narrow, it's ridiculous. Especially when you know how many of these people who have achieved that were not natural lightweights. So the solution could be to lower the lightweight to what, 66 kilos? The president of my rowing club, a very good friend of mine and a person I I deeply respect, very intelligent, very brave-hearted person. He's about as tall as I am, maybe even smaller. I'm not quite sure. But he's maybe 65, 66 kilos. He's not heavy at all. But boy, is he able to compete with the heavies. Unless you have severe headwind conditions, and it's not about dynamic rowing anymore, but just who has the greatest displacement. Okay, then being heavy makes more sense. His issue is not the height. His issue is the body weight. If they would have told him, you're too small, blah, 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 and he would have been oppressed by that, he would have never become a successful rower, and rowing would miss a very great person, a great president of a rowing club. So my point to you is, if you need advice, look for data. Try to get your hands on a bi-rower. Look for somebody who has one if you don't have one yourself. Or go to a club and say, please, can I have a couple of strokes? And if you're in Austria, come to Vienna. I'll happily invite you. Don't need to pay. Just come and look at your stroke length. And see, what do you need to do to achieve 100-degree stroke length, 110, maybe 150, maybe 120? And if you feel that is possible, then become an effective rower. You know, there's an important thing you need to know. The mistake that many rowers make is that they try to be extra long. And when you're extra long, you get strokes that look a bit like these. Again, please look at the force curves. You disintegrate your body. I used to do that, the Michael Jackson move. And then they become round and soft, and the force transfer isn't right anymore. And then they do this, and then they usually start early and overpull too much at the finish. And because they don't feel when enough is enough. By the way, one of the next videos is going to be how much lean back do you need? Because they don't feel when enough is enough, they overdo it. And then they say, oh no, I gotta do less. So they do. I saw people row that way, especially masters. Don't do that. Be in a comfortable position that you can reproduce. The important thing you have to understand is that today's equipment and material is stiffer than what we had in the 60s. I learned to row with wooden oars when I was 10, 11 years old. They only let me row with wooden oars. I think it was very good. Markham blades and wooden oars. I learned to be effective. And you know what? Back then we say, oh, the levers were so soft because when you start to drive, that wooden oar bends forever, and then it starts to become, then it transfers force, and at the finish it snaps and so on. Yeah, absolutely. And then you look at the Abagnale brothers, who beat the hell out of everybody, the Abagnale brothers of Italy, in the 80s, and they raced against the East Germans who were selected by height. And if you were an East German and a centimeter too small, you had no chance. It's that stupidly rigid. So you have to take into consideration that the equipment today favors people who are not too tall. This is why, for example, the German sailing scholar Zeidler used exceptionally wide spread and exceptionally long oars. And I've seen very similar things with some Italian scholars, spreads of 163 centimeters, abnormally wide spreads. You would do that if you're too tall for regular setups. And maybe this is something we can slowly do. Maybe that's something we can allow ourselves to do, to have different setups for different body height, and not one setup for everybody in a quad. I would call it innovation. And rowing is not innovation driven at all. Ian Randall told me an interesting story. The first time the sliding seat was used in a race, I think it was in England, the team that used the sliding seat beat everybody else by a distance that was absurd. It was grotesque. But it took the other teams 2 or 3 years of pondering before they started to use a sliding seat as well. Something as simple as that. And innovations never came from big companies in rowing. Never. Ian Randall wrote a paper on that. Go to randallfoils.com. I think this is where he published it. If not, I will kindly ask Ian if we could put it up in the rowing zone. This is a problem we have in rowing overall. With that being said, let me end this video right here. Sum it up. If you can generate about 100 degrees stroke length, about 100, not 100, and if not, no, then you are apparently tall enough for a competitive rower. If all you can do is 100 degrees and you row with somebody who can easily do 116 degrees and you can't find a matching force curve that makes sense, okay, then row with somebody else or row a single. But if you can have around 110 degrees and everybody else has around 110 degrees as well, well, then you adapt your stroke to each other. This is how you do it. So you say, okay, do we have matching force curve? Does everybody have the same force curve? Or no, do some in a team have a force curve like that? And do some people have a force curve like that? That is much more important than 5 more degrees of stroke length or 10 more degrees of stroke length, the stroke structure. With that being said, I thank you very much for your time, for watching that. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion. Again, I will put this video up on the rowing zone, rowing.zone. My handle is @Aram. And I'm looking forward to feedback and comments. I read every single comment. It's super interesting. And if you're interested in the bar rower, this is my so-called baby. I started to build this up, really started when I was 18. I'm 41 now. My entire adult life isn't that. Oh, for many years I had 2-3 day jobs to pay for everything to set this up with my partner, who invested his entire retirement into that. I built this up because it's something I needed. Most of you know the story about my injured back, and I still suffer today from the linear erg. But it's also something I think that we need. If you can train like that all winter, and you just know your stroke structure, as a coach, you just synchronize teams off the water, on land, and they have one common handwriting. You know exactly how to behave during a 2K. You know when the force curves change because they're in high lactate state. You just shape teams. You can match the stroke lengths and say, hey, everybody go for 105 degrees or 110 degrees with this and that force curve. And you don't have to go by, oh, you look slightly different than your partner. No, what's the effect? What's the effect on the boat? And with the bar rower, for the first time, you can actually measure the effect that people have. And if you train and synchronize the effect of an entire team, it's just much faster. A lot faster. Yeah. With that being said, thanks for watching. I see you in the next video. Subscribe, share, like, whatever you feel is appropriate. One of the next videos is going to be how far should you lean back at the finish and what is actually important. And another video is the different objectives of rowing. Because if you row as a junior or as an elite level athlete, you're willing to pay a serious price for certain things. I'm not talking about money. That you cannot afford to pay when you're a bit older. And as a masters rower or a late starter, you always have to take into consideration who you try to imitate and who you try to copy. There are a couple more videos in the pipeline, so if that's interesting to you, maybe consider subscribing, and there's a notification bell you can hit, I think, on YouTube. That will give you an immediate notification when I upload a video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, bye-bye.